Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sean Lang. Now, I've spent the last several years building and operating a digital agency that's grown well past 50 people, and that's definitely shaped how I think about what really matters when things get complex. Today, I'm joined by my friend Chris Dubois, founder of Dynamic Agency OS and also host of the Agency Forward podcast, which you should go and listen to directly after this. Now, Chris is my go-to positioning guru for agencies. Chris, great to have you
Mm.
on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I always forget how much of a radio voice you have, and it's just like it makes me self-conscious, and so
You know what? It's just now I'm gonna be self-conscious about sounding like a radio host, and how do I
right.
sound like I'm cool and I don't care? Ugh. But I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm gonna have to put on this
Mm,
this stupid Simpson-esque voice. Anyway, Chris,
mm.
tell me all about your agency journey.
So before getting into, the agency world, I was in the Army as an infantry officer, and around 2019 was when I kinda left active duty and did not have a lot of job options at the time, which is interesting. You would think, right, shooting things, blowing stuff up, jumping out of airplanes would get you something, but no, nobody wanted to hire me. Um, so anyways, we moved probably because we were moving back to Maine. There's not a ton of stuff back here in Maine. But I found a job at an agency. It's completely remote, even back in 2019, which was like at the time a little surprising, right? And started working there, learning how to market using my degree in English, I guess. And then after about 9 months, I became their head of operations. Did that for a couple of years, and then became the CEO. Did that for another couple of years before kind of setting off to do my own thing, working with agencies in a different way.
So this agency that you sort of worked at and sort of rose through the ranks to become the head honcho or the CEO, what did this agency do?
Yeah, so we did too much. I can see that now with
Classic.
looking back, but we primarily built websites for tech and SaaS companies, so a super broad market as well. And then we would do the marketing to those websites on the back end, so creating any of the lead magnets, doing a lot of like inbound marketing and stuff there. No social media. We would run ads if we just wanted to like amplify something, but we weren't an ad agency by any means. Um, so yeah, it's mostly just the websites and then marketing to those websites to get people more business.
Okay, yeah, that's a fairly common sort of
Yeah.
agency slash service makeup that I hear. So you went from marketer to head of ops to CEO. What are some of the things that you saw in head of ops that maybe people in your previous position of just marketer like would not have seen or had sort of access to?
Yeah, so I think I came in with a very army mentality, I guess, like everything that I was doing, like, as an infantry officer was very operations focused, right? So, like, you have the different cells within the military and stuff, and, like, if you're in the combat arms, you're generally gonna align more on operations. So, all of my training and everything, like, it was either you're fighting or you're running operations behind the scenes. And so coming into the agency was just like I kind of used that lens of like, okay, if I was going to plan this like a military operation, what would I have to do in order to make sure we're successful? And so I started pulling in some of the concepts. Um, we have something called intelligence preparation of the battlefield, which is it was a very lengthy course, but essentially it's like if we go into a fight, how do we just look at the map, look at what the enemy's doing, and just know what we're supposed to be doing? And I broke it down to green pen, red pen, blue pen. It's like green pen, we're going to look at the terrain and see, right? Because like even the enemy has to deal with the same terrain between us, and so we got to know what we're looking at first. Then we look at the red pen. What's the enemy's most likely course of action? And then the blue pen is like, what are we going to do? And this is obviously very simplified for the podcast, but when you put that into a business environment and say, okay, well, what's the market doing? That's our green pen, right? Like what are all the different shifts that are happening? What are the variables that we need to be aware of that even the competition needs to be paying attention to? Then, all right, based off those variables, what is the competition likely going to do with all of this? If they're you know, if there are other web agencies and we're gonna okay, well, what types of sites are they starting to build? What do we believe they're gonna be? Maybe React is like the new thing and everybody's pushing towards it. So like, okay, well, what if we went a different path and we actually chose this? And so we're able to structure our plan based off what everyone else is doing so that we can actually stay differentiated and find, success there. But so Yeah, just pulling like different models like that to decision points on everything, right? Like, all right, we're going to test this out. We want to run a marketing campaign. We believe it's going to achieve this, so we're going to run it for this long. If we hit 30 days and we don't at least hit this marker, that means we need to change something. We're either going to change X, Y, or Z, and like just kind of building that level of planning into what we're doing, so that we always knew like what was next. There was never like a point where we're just confused or like taking a guess at what should happen. Because mainly in war, you don't, if you're guessing, right? There is a fog of war, but if you're spending all your time guessing, it's probably not going to end well for the guys on the ground. And so, just kind of running the same thing for the agency. It's like most marketers that I talk to claim running a test is just like going out and trying things. They're not documenting. They're not like mapping the variables to kind of make sure they actually know if it is successful, what contributed to that, like why was it successful. And I think once you start doing those things, it becomes very easy to actually grow your business.
I
But
think that that context you came from and sort of applying the military process lens to marketing is actually fascinating, and it makes so much sense. And you must have walked into the agency, and agencies, are notorious for just being all chaos on the back end. And what was this agency like that? And did you kind of feel like you had your work cut out for you to really add sort of this military grade
Mhm.
structure to it?
So at the time, it felt very chaotic. Now that I've worked with dozens of agencies, I've realized it was actually pretty tame. It was it was not that bad. But there was like a shock to the system coming from discipline and everything, like waking up at the same time every day to make sure that we're doing the same routine and like hitting those beats. Compared to, hey, this client had these fires and we got to figure this out now on the fly and what are we doing? Um, but ultimately, it came down to, like, what systems were already there. I think they were already using some strong systems, beforehand with project management, but forcing the entire team, like, at least once a week was getting in that system together to verify everything, make sure we had a plan for the week, everything was set, and then rolling out from there. And so, like,
Yeah,
I can't even remember what Liquid Planner was the initial tool. We ended
liquid
up
planner.
yeah, super old. We migrated off that to ClickUp, and that had some struggles, I guess, at first, just because there's so much you can do with ClickUp. But we found a system that worked for us, and we kept beating into it like, "You will use this system." But we got to the point where we could plan out like the next 90 days. We'd deliver a campaign strategy to all of our clients, really either last week of the quarter or the first week of the quarter. And then as soon as it was approved, we knew what tasks were going on for the next 90 days. They were built in ClickUp by our ops specialists. Like we just knew what was happening. So if a team member wanted to take time off, it's like we didn't even have to like reassign their work. They just front loaded, maybe you're like rear loaded some of that and they could kind of manage their own schedule.
Yeah, that's really cool, and that actually is very similar in a way to my experience prior to running an agency, prior to founding and starting and running an agency, is that what I was doing before I decided to quit working for somebody else to start my own thing is I was actually managing an airport fueling operation. And so my team had to receive the fuel and check the fuel quality and drive out to the aircraft to the both the commercial apron, but then also we were fueling military aircraft, and we had an FBO, which is basically a private terminal for rich people, and we were fueling Tony Robbins' jet all the time, and Chad Kruger and Kaylee Cuoco and all these like rich people all the time, and everything was so process driven, literally every single thing, and there was no I was shocked when I came into the agency world and everyone's answer to how something gets done was like, "Well, it depends." And I was like, "No, there is one correct way to do things or everybody dies." It's kind of
Right.
like the lens that I brought into it. And I had this very like inflexible way of sort of managing operations because I was trained on this like if you skip the step, we are liable if anything happens. And so it was
Mhm.
so critical. And I know that some people were very frustrated with my approach to that, but honestly, I think that that approach actually sets you up for success in the long term, as long as you can bring everybody along and follow the process
Right.
correctly. The problem is when nobody's bought in and nobody follows the process, and then you find out after the fact, oh, no one's following the process.
Yep.
This is a problem. But
Well, and even
um,
it only takes one guy with a cigarette on that refueling line, right? And
And
so it's like
it's usually the
playing games.
pilot. It's usually the pilot with the
Yeah,
cigarette, honestly, in my in my experience.
yeah.
These old school guys who have been, doing it for way too long. But, okay, so you went from head of ops, and then you transitioned to CEO, and I find with my clients that, um, a lot of them are CEO by title, but they have not yet actually learned how to be a CEO. So what was that transition
Sure.
like for you, going from head of ops to suddenly, like, CEO, which is a very different role, and I think
Mhm.
that it's been kind of glamorized and romanticized by hustle culture and also LinkedIn. Everyone wants to put CEO in their job title, but a lot of people actually aren't CEO in actions, just
Yeah,
title only. So what was that like for you?
yep. First, I 100% agree with you. It was actually really important to me that if I ever became CEO, like I was running I wanted to be the CEO of someone else's company before I was ever the CEO of my company. So that it was like I wanted to kind of prove to myself like, "Oh, you can actually run this. It's not just the title." And so that was felt great being able to do this. But honestly, it probably wasn't even that close to like what you would expect from a CEO role, mainly because the company founder stayed on board. So he was kind of the CEO, although he didn't even use that title for himself. He stayed on board, though, it slid over to become our head of growth, and I became the CEO. So like he maintained a lot of the like sales functions and stuff and just kind of kept oversight of all that. I kind of kept running all of the operations as a CEO, but then took on more of the team responsibilities, right? All the hiring, firing, like all of those, just general ownership of the business fell to me. Um, but so I don't know, in a lot of ways, it was like I was still doing the same job with just a little more responsibility.
Mm,
And so it didn't feel like that heavy of a shift. It definitely changed some things with client relationships where some of them had known me as a marketer. And then even as a head of ops, like I was still involved in some client accounts because we weren't that big of a team. But then as a CEO, it's like all of a sudden when I would go into a client engagement, like it held a little more weight for those. Like they were like happy to see that I was in the meeting. Um, and so it's interesting that it was like it became like a lever that we could pull if we needed it somewhere. It's like, just tap me in. I can join that client meeting and, smooth things out or help with, get them set up for like an upsell, something like that, right?
mhm.
Um, but yeah, otherwise wasn't a huge shift. Um,
Very interesting. So
yeah.
so when you were at this point, when you had ascended to the mountain, to the top of the mountain, you're the CEO now, you're head of ops, you're still, um, seeing clients occasionally, but you also have a lot more ownership. Uh, I find that when you have a lot of ownership and you romanticize wanting the ownership, but then you kind of realize that every problem ultimately lands at your feet and you
Yeah.
have to solve the problem. So, like, what maybe not the as in all of them, but what's a standout struggle or challenge that you encountered when you were in that seat?
I would say it's some of the team stuff, like things that I probably was gonna also manage as the head of ops. But like it was usually team stuff, where like I probably made a mistake on hiring some people and mm, like one of them was not started gossiping like amongst the team and like lying. I already had to talk to this person about like if you're in a client meeting and the client's not happy about something, you don't just throw someone else under the bus. It's like, oh, that's our fault or it's my fault. Like you do those, but like we're a team. We're not just gonna be like, oh, it's Steve's fault. Um, but then, yeah, it turned into whatever, so, like, it led to just having to fire the person, like, after we kinda run the 3 strikes system of, "Hey, this is what's up. Here's what's wrong. This is what let's make a plan together so that this never happens again." And second time it happens, like, "Look, that plan didn't work, obviously. Let's make a new plan, but this is probably the last time we're gonna have this conversation." And then if it still happens, it's like, "Alright, now we can just" like, we all knew, right? There was no surprise here to being fired. Um, those are probably the hardest ones for me, I would say, mainly because, like, in the army, you don't really fire someone, right? It's like we have court martial, we have different, like, different punishments and stuff, but you gotta do something really bad to be getting kicked out. Um, in the in the civilian side, it was more just like, I know this person probably didn't mean to keep doing these things wrong, but they're doing them wrong, and I've definitely talked to them about it. Now their family has a little less income right now, and, like, I don't necessarily feel good about that, but at the same time, like, that's part of the ownership of
Mhm.
your role, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that you mentioned sort of a highlight challenge of being people. I think that at the end of the day, and I think we spoke about this when I came on your podcast, is people generally end up being the biggest challenge
Mhm.
of any agency, whether it's finding the right people early on or whether it's you hit scale and now the only way that you can actually continue to scale is to find a whole lot of the right people in a short
Yeah.
amount of time and then learning how to manage those people and building a culture and suddenly you realize that you're doing a lot less of the thing that you're actually here for because you're spending a lot more time just with
Yeah.
people. Um, so at some point, you decided to do your own thing. So why don't you talk to us about the transition, and then let's introduce Dynamic Agency OS.
Yeah. At some point, I realized I was working 60 plus hours a week and, still responding to all the clients, doing all the team stuff. And just, I was not happy with that kind of setup. And so I was like, you know what? I could probably do this on my own. So I shifted out, set up a nice transition path for the agency where like I gave them probably 6 months of, I stepped down as CEO, stayed on board to just keep helping kind of part time to make sure nothing fell off. And then I started moving into coaching agencies, um, specifically with the positioning problem. Kind of, I really enjoy the marketing side. I don't, even though I was head of ops, I don't like touching the ops side. I can call people like you to just step in and assist, and it means I can just focus on helping people market. How do we actually get you to stand out in this environment where now it's like anyone with a laptop can call themselves an agency, right? And even if
Mhm.
they're not competing at the same level as you, it's like they're still showing up somewhere and they're adding noise to this market. And so the people that you're trying to reach, like, still have to find you within this mess of people who are sitting in their mom's basement, right, typing away on a keyboard. And
Absolutely.
so,
So what do you
yeah.
what do you think is the number one biggest mistake or common problem that you see that agencies commit?
Whew, man, there's a lot of problems. Um, I'd say let's go high level first, and then you can work me down from here.
Sure.
I think one of the biggest challenges that not even challenge, one of the biggest like issues that most agencies face is that they try solving demand issues with supply solutions. And so if we look at this like from the constraint model, right, we're either constrained by supply or demand. And what's interesting on the supply side is that, like, for most of the supply issues, you could just hire someone, right? Like, if we don't have capacity or we need more skills, right, you could bring someone in. Doesn't mean you're gonna be fully optimized to be able to handle that, and again, that's where, like, you bring someone like you in to actually, like, "Hey, you probably don't need to hire someone, you just need to get your team actually doing this thing." But on the market side, like, it's way harder because we actually have to put something out there that the market now responds to. And so like we're continuously testing, trying to find what works, what do people want. And what I found is that a lot of agencies will they have like a demand issue. They just don't have enough business coming in the door, but they convince themselves that if they just finish that SOP, it's going to solve itself. And so it's like we've tricked ourselves where because we're doing work, like we're doing something that feels productive, it seems like we're solving the problem when in reality it's like that problem's just getting bigger and you're going to keep probably having to rely on referrals way longer, until you can actually gain control of your own pipeline.
Yeah, that's definitely a really, really, really common problem. I also see I see the flip side too. I'll see the flip side where a a founder has really, really nailed. I don't even think it's necessarily the positioning, but for whatever reason, they've really nailed the offer and they've nailed pipeline, and they have an
Yep.
overflowing pipeline, and they don't actually have an agency at all. They have a team of like duct taped together mercenaries, and they're just holding
Yeah.
on for dear life and hoping that the clients don't notice that nobody actually knows what they're doing, and they
Yep.
just pile more and more and more clients on. So there's definitely kind of like two separate sort of sides to that. But so for the
Mhm.
agencies right now that are really really focused on the things that they shouldn't be focusing on, they're trying to polish these SOPs that, let's be honest, like no one is really going to use or read anyways. Um, where should they start? How do they first identify the problem, and then what steps do they take to like
Mhm.
start to correct course?
Man, we could go into so many things, so I don't know how deep you wanna go. But the first thing they should do is find a niche, right? I'll just let's just use that. Niching is one of those things that, like, I think it's become like commonplace advice, and I think a lot of people kind of actually miss the point of it. But the but when we just look at niching, it's like if I can get really focused with my marketing so that I'm targeting a very specific type of person, that also helps on the operation side, right? Because we have to do like build fewer
Immensely.
and fewer systems. And
Mhm.
so this is one of those things that like no matter what will help your business, right? It's not like a should I do, it's like yes, you should do this, period. Do it. It's going to help other things. But once you pick the niche, I hate stopping at just like a vertical. And so kind of my methodology is we find the vertical because we want to have some sort of industry knowledge and like know where we can find these people. Then within that we find the horizontal. What is the job function that we want to target? And so that could be, CMOs at textile manufacturing plants and stuff. So we've gotten very specific on the industry and now we know the exact person. That person gives us a little redundancy if like say this industry starts to slip right over the coming years, if I know enough CMOs, they're going to be looking for other jobs too. Maybe I can just follow them to wherever they're going, and so now I can find a new vertical where it's not a huge shift. So like we've added a little safety net within there. But more importantly, where the vertical and horizontal cross, we get that nice little problem set. And like these people in this vertical have this problem. And you can choose from any of those problems and say, this is the one that I feel like we are the best fit to solve. And when you niche on a problem, now it's much easier to put that out because one, you have the vertical targeted, you have the people who like are literally scrolling LinkedIn and they see their title called out for their vertical, and then you talk about this problem and ideally you're
Mhm.
doing it with such clarity that they say you must have the solution because you know this problem better than I do. And so we do that. Then we focus on the positioning, which like how does now we know who we're trying to target, how do we want to show up for them, how do we want them to see us? So we double down on that. We get them um you know move the pieces, which can just kind of go quickly over this piece. I feel like all of these are like massive webinars and like lessons in between, right? But, with positioning, I think a lot of people stop at messaging, and that's a challenge because if you can say all the right things, but if you don't show that you can deliver on those things, you've
Mhm.
lost all credibility. And so when we say this is how we wanna show up in the market, it has to go through everything you're doing. It has to, impact your operations, your finances. How do we charge people, right? Like how are we delivering our offer? Like every little thing you're doing has to stem back from that one positioning decision. Then we create their offer. Then you do your go-to-market strategy and get out there and I generally solves most of your problems once we've gone through all of that.
Yeah,
Can't even remember
it's
the first question, but
I mean, yeah, neither can I. That it's what's really really interesting, is I take a very similar approach to a completely different, but equally foundational element of agencies, and this is on honestly businesses in general, which is like, creating
Mhm.
culture and
Yep.
defining your core values. And then I walk people through like it's almost a mirror image of what you said in terms of positioning, which is like your core values you need to actually define in advance how they show up in service delivery and client experience
Yes.
and how you run operations and how you hire people and how you manage people and even like literally down to like how you invoice people. Like your core
Mhm.
values are going to reflect uh, how you follow up on people who don't pay, like all of these things.
Yep.
And I find it actually fascinating, something I'm going to chew on afterwards, which is you're basically the same approach, but on the positioning side, because it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's funny that if you actually if you strange if you take a very proactive and thoughtful approach, then and you design your business on a a thoughtful, proactive foundation, you actually design a much better business. Like,
Right. Weird, right?
yeah, I I I
But
I
yeah,
think it's super cool. So what?
I can tell. Oh, sorry, cut you off.
No, no,
Like
no, no.
I
Go
can
go for it.
tell
Go for it.
when someone has done the culture work and then shows up and says, "Hey, I have I just need demand here. Like we're struggling to get clients." I can see when they have done that, like the values work, the culture work, and it actually goes through their business because it's much easier than to pick a niche and just know how we're going to attack this. And so it doesn't matter how you get there, but it's like it has to happen. Like it, and it's not a we believe in integrity. It's like, yeah, no one would argue against that. So it's not a point, right? You can't say that. Um, but when they've
I
actually done the
disagree.
work and they
I don't
oh
believe
yeah?
in integrity. No,
Yeah.
I'm joking, but it's making
Yeah.
your point. Like nobody's gonna disagree with that. So like, don't even say
Right.
it. The the positioning piece, I think being a through line through everything is so critical.
Mhm.
And how do you go about using, again, positioning to determine what services to offer? Because I think that if you are well positioned, then doesn't that kind of in some way solve the problem of the quote unquote full service agency?
Yeah, so I guess this is all kinda, like, lumped in. I think even, like, your niching and, like, being able to target someone is also part of your positioning, because really if positioning is about how you show up in the minds of the buyer, then the buyer is part of this equation regardless, and so if I if I really want to deliver like ads for whatever reason. But the people that I want to target don't need ads. Like that's just not a problem that they're having. Then I got to find a different group to sell to if I want to keep that solution. Or I say, well, then what do they need? And I change my service offering. Like it can work either way, but they're inseparable, right? Like we have to kind of marry all of those up. And so but for the most part, I would look at it, we know what problem we're solving, and so rather than saying, "What service do I wanna deliver here?" we say, "What solution do I need to provide?" And so you could
Mm.
have a solution that includes ads and a website and SEO. But if it's done in a way that's actually prescribed, right? Like we're not just throwing everything in and saying like maybe this will work, like, or you're just piecemealing out what you think the client needs. But it's like, no, if you have this problem, then I know the exact solution for you. We have to step one, we have to do this, right? Maybe we have ads and SEO because uh, when you're starting out, you got to keep the lights on. And so if we do just SEO for you, we're not going to be able to make as much money. But if I focus on doing some ads, like we throw some ad spend, we can get some quick like demand in the door while slowly building up your SEO side so that eventually you don't need ads because we got our SEOs humming and now your cost per lead is lower, right? All of this works better. So our solution is actually this system of saying we're going to start high on ads, low on SEO, shift them. And through this, we need something to point to. So we're going to get a website in there. Right. And so now rather than saying, well, we could build you a website, we could do ads, we could do SEO, you tell us what you need, we'll work this out. It's like, no, no, we have a system. Like, do you have this problem? Because we know how to solve it. And then when we actually do solve it, because we've hopefully worked the system multiple times for multiple clients, we get more testimonials about that solution for the people with that specific problem. And so now when that testimonial says, man, I was really struggling with this, and then they hit me with this solution and it's awesome, like, that's what's gonna resonate with more people as they show up on this website.
That yeah,
Yeah.
that's huge. Guys, if you're listening and you're taking notes, it's not about the service, it's about the solution. And I feel like I learned this lesson too many times and well, didn't actually learn from this lesson enough until finally. So many of these young agencies, especially, are susceptible to this having this giant, massive capabilities list, and then just sort of letting clients pick from it as if it's a
Uh-huh.
menu,
Yeah.
versus actually just providing the client with the solution. And there might only be a few elements from that menu that even come into play with the solution. And so
Mhm.
let's just focus on that. Let's not even, it shouldn't be a choose your own adventure. It should be like whatever solves the problem, whatever gets the solution
Right.
is what we're going to provide. And if that means that we need to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and this random thing over here that nobody wants to do, well, if I position it in a way of like, we actually have to do this in order to get the solution, guess what? We're going to do it. They're going to do it. And
Mhm.
we're going to get the solution, the outcome that people want. I think that that marketers, owners, agency owners in general get really, really romantic about their list of deliverables and all of the things that they do. And I'm always
Mhm.
telling clients, your client does not care about your checklist of activity that you've done. They just care about the outcome that those activities
Right.
create. And so if we can actually just align on, again, to use your term, the solution, that's how we get closest to win-win. We don't always win, obviously, but that's how we get closest to it. And
Right.
it sounds like this all comes back to starting with positioning.
Yeah, there's I mean, there's so many points I can make too, like, the comparison I like doing is, like, if I went to the garage, like, to get my car fixed, and I show up and I say, "Hey, I need new brake lines. Can you guys also do that?" And I see the guy go in the back, get on Google and type in how to fix brake lines, right? I'm immediately like, "Wait, hold on," right? But how many agencies, someone will show up and like, "Can you guys also do this?" And they're like, "Yeah, we can do that." And it's like, and then they go back, "Guys, we got to figure out how to do this." And now it gets added
Yeah.
to a service menu because they didn't want, like, right? It's disingenuous. It's like, if anything, like it is it it's unethical, like, at some point, right? To be able to take
Yep.
someone's money to do something, and so it's better to just create your own solution that says, "This is what we're doing." It also removes comparison, right? Like, people can't if you have a specific solution on your site, another your competitor would have to have the same solution to be for them to compare you guys. If you just have a list of services, they're going to look at your pricing. They're going to say, "Well, you offer all of these things. They offer all of these though, and it's cheaper." And so like you just lost a deal because you have just a menu put up on your site. Someone wanted KFC instead of McDonald's for this meal, right?
Ah,
Versus you having like a nice price fixed menu where they're showing up, getting the experience, saying, "No, sit down, we got this."
such a great point. Such a great point. Man, I feel like we could talk for at least another hour about this,
Mhm.
but that is not the format of the show. We are at
Dun, dun,
time.
dun.
Chris, where can people find out more about you and Dynamic Agency OS and Agency Forward podcast and any other things that you're up to?
Yeah. Everything's on dynamicagencyos.com. And otherwise, just connect with me on LinkedIn. I like to chat with people there.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.